The chair of the session is Wojciech Kubik, the editor-in-chief at Business Alert. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Our panelists are taking their seats and we're going to follow this routine. I'm going to address our Polish guests in Polish and international guests in English, and we're going to try and provide as much time as possible for Mr. Minister representing Ukraine, who for obvious reasons is going to be otherwise engaged. I'm going to switch to English now and ask a question first to Mr. Minister.
Dear Minister, can you hear us? Mr. Demchenkov? Yes.
I can hear you.
It's great to have you here, please.
I can hear you.
Yeah, please, let's have a great applause for the Ukrainian Vice Minister of Energy. So you have our support, as usual. We keep our fingers crossed and our prayers with you. Could you inform us a little bit about the present situation in Ukraine in terms of energy security in those tough times when you are countering an aggression from Russia?
Good morning, dear colleagues, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, ministers. Thank you for having me today. The situation is really fragile. We have a lot of damages. The most important task is to be ready before winter period of time. But greetings from Ukraine. And you should all understand that from the beginning of the Russian invasion, Poland and the Baltic countries have stood with Ukraine as neighbors, partners, and friends. And this is really important. Your decisive position towards Russian fossil fuels to a large extent shape of the position of other European countries in the sanctions policy. You were among the first who set a personal example refusing of Russian gas, oil, and coal last year. Thank you for your considerable support, and this is really important. The war stressed the interdependence of European countries. We are strong if we are united, and solidarity is a key to the victory over Russia and for the future victory and speed up energy transition. In Ukraine, we have energy strategy till 2050. And we understand that we should combine renewables and nuclear generation. We think that 40% will be nuclear and over 60% is located for renewables, biogas and hydrogen. We developed our energy strategy with the understanding that Ukraine, with its vast potential, should replace Russia as a continental energy supplier, especially in electricity, covering needs of our neighbors. Our clean and affordable energy gases could support in green transition European countries. And very important that we could achieve the European Green Deal objectives. Be linking to Poland with pipelines, we can use their capacities to deliver not only natural gas, but also clean hydrogen after proper modernization of pipeline infrastructure. A sustainable and resilient energy system involves efficient distribution and storage of electricity. And this is especially important, especially talking about weather-dependent solar and wind generation. And the most efficient balancing system combines energy decentralization and storage on a national level with transnational cooperation. This is really important to understand that European countries can play a balancing role for each other. And Ukraine realized it extremely well in 2022 when our synchronization with ENG ensured an additional sources of electricity if something went badly wrong. And dear colleagues, this is really important to have clear understanding that even after war, during war and after war, we should work more on increasing capacity of our grid and storages, speed up green transition. And this is our goal here in Ukraine. During reconstruction, during rebuilding, we concentrate on this. And Poland plays a key role here, maintain gateway for Ukraine energy to EU. Even during the Russian invasion, our state managed to increase cross-border capacity of electricity flows. Khmelnytskaya MPP, Rzeszów power line makes more than 2 gigawatts of exchange capacity, and this is real. Moreover, we are carefully looking into other projects. In total, our plan is to reach 6 gigawatts of export of electricity by 2032 and 10 gigawatts by 2050. And I'm really glad that our gas network operation also, we have keeping in touch both companies and present interesting project, transmission project from Poland to Ukraine. Our countries, our partnership goes beyond geography and history. And acting together, we can make considerable, resilient and sustainable energy sector in Europe, and strengthening our partnership and cooperation. For sure, it will be huge contribution to more sustainable energy sector and more affordable energy power to our consumers, both here in Ukraine and in Poland. Thank you. Over to you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to ask you a lot more, but I know that you need to move on for your important responsibilities connected to the situation. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, another time, a big applause for our Ukrainian guest. Thank you, sir. Fingers crossed, we're with you, and I hope to hear you soon. And I'll switch back to Polish once again. I przejdę do kolejnego.
Allow me to move on to the next minister. Madam Minister, whose brief since early June is strategic energy infrastructure. She's got experience of the Ministry of Climate Change for regulation, but now she's got a new brief, critical energy infrastructure. And here in Gdańsk, she very often visits us, would like to ask you to deliver your expose, what we need to do with critical energy infrastructure post 2022, when we have the energy crisis still underway. What are the tasks you see for yourself? Thank you very much. My brief was regulation, but not only. I followed to the contribution by Mr. Minister, and it is true. Critical infrastructure attacks in Ukraine, which last autumn and early winter last year took place, also required a lot of effort on our part. I remember the effort of state-owned companies which supplied the parts and components and cables, actually anything that could be used on the Ukrainian side to support Ukraine and to fix the infrastructure, because that was a regular campaign of attacks on critical infrastructure to make sure that Ukraine loses. So that was my brief, and actually those are the two very much intertwined matters, and the position I have the honor of being on now is the continuation of this effort at the Ministry of Climate Change. Speaking of my expose, it's quite obvious actually. We must reinforce our grid. The grid must be ready for the changing energy mix. It will not change overnight, obviously, but it will change soon and dynamically so, and we've seen it, and the networks need to be part of it. I've not spoken about the obvious, i.e. energy transmission from the north to the south, so this large energy investment is underway. I'm speaking of offshore here and also of large-scale nuclear. But we need to speak of dispersed energy production, prosumers, renewable energy sources, small modular reactors. All this needs to be part of the system, so we'd like to adapt the national energy system so that it takes off large volumes of power from the north and allow to not phase out or wean out renewable and unusual sources, which has been quite contentious. The second thing, natural gas. Energy security in Europe. We have made it through this latest winter quite unscathed, but it costs us a lot. But this thing is not done. It's an ongoing matter. Let's not forget that the war is underway in Europe. We are getting accustomed to it. It's not on headlines anymore, but you find the reports on pages 4 or 5 on newspapers. And the energy crisis is still very much underway, and its dependence on natural gas as a cheap transition fuel cost us a lot. It has cost our societies a lot, and businesses a lot of effort as well, and this hasn't come to an end. So supply, diversification, interconnectors, storage facilities, sourcing, weaning ourselves off natural gas. This is the second priority. And the third priority is nuclear. Nuclear energy. Speaking of the state investment in Pomerania, which is getting into this decisive stage, but also dispersed nuclear. Mr. Prime Minister visited Canada last Friday. He observed how small modular reactors are being built. He was at the first construction site. This is also the future of Poland. And I must say, dispersed energy generation is important for stable and zero emissions energy. So the investment process and the huge effort we have undertaken is going to be continued for large-scale nuclear power, but also small-scale power. I know I've spoken a lot, so I'll stop here. Yes, but I'll ask you a follow-up question. When can we expect hitting the first milestone? So the first press release with a new breakthrough. We've heard that in the matter of Pomeranian nuclear, which is so close to our hearts here, we can possibly find out more about at the turn of this school year and holidays. It is true. We've been delivering on this plan consistently, and all the parties have done their work, and actually early autumn is going to be a breakthrough moment of which we'll keep you posted. We've been still in talks about transnational cooperation with our European partners. We've been in talks with the European Commission. It is an open secret, and they are at a very advanced stage. The consortium, which is going to be made by Bechtel and Westinghouse, is yet another milestone. So also the environmental procedure is underway. This is all in motion. We just need to mind the wheels keep turning, and that's what we've been doing. Thank you very much. We've had our expose. We know what the priorities are and how this policy is going to be managed, and a very important aspect of this change, renewable energy sources we're going to have many more of, is the reform of a different way. So transitioning the energy sector, the utilities, which to date have had a lot of coal assets, are supposed to be actually, or the weight of those is going to be removed by creating the National Agency for Energy Security. And we've been joined by Mr. Plenipotentiary for another thing, which is the transformation of utilities and coal mining. Mr. Minister, you've spoken that the war allows us, makes us to revise down the assumptions for energy transition in Poland. So when are we going to see the arrival of this National Energy Security Agency? And if the social deal is still in place, or are there going to be any amendments there too? First and foremost, the transition that we've been talking about, it's supposed to be secure. And as it's been said by Madam Minister, so the setting out of the objectives, speaking of the very critical infrastructure development and the grid and the objectives for the new energy industry, to do it securely and quite quickly, we need to have a stable source of power and as cheap as possible energy for now. So as we keep transitioning, and we've been doing whatever it takes after the outbreak of war, after this energy shock in Europe, not only in Poland but in Europe, we've been doing what we can to make sure that Poland makes it relatively unscathed through this transition, so that the transition itself is not at any cost. Speaking of energy prices, we've been doing what we could to make sure the supply diversification lowers energy costs so that it's affordable for an average customer, but also for businesses which showed the weight of this transition. Speaking of the National Agency for Energy Security, so the sequestering of the coal assets from energy utilities, the aim is so that the utilities can invest and keep developing so that they have access to credit and they can pursue those new avenues in this 21st century energy industry. And the National Agency for Energy Security, I believe, finalizing the arrival thereof is on home straight, and this is going to be any day now. And the point of this is to assure energy supplies, because now we know 70% of our energy generation is coal-based. So that we can transition securely, we need to ensure energy supply, so the base of the energy mix, which is coal, so that renewable energy sources could develop, and until we build then yet another core thing, and our hopes are very much bet on nuclear power, we must have this secure base. And what Europe has suggested, that the transition fuel could be natural gas, this has failed to deliver. This, to an extent, so the objectives set out by the European Commission and naming natural gas as a transitioning fuel, it could be a bold statement, but this is very much at the basis of the war that we have in the East, so the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So, Mr. Minister, shall we slow down or remove coal from transition, or we should continue so, but minding we don't find ourselves at the mercy of natural gas? We wouldn't like to rely on natural gas because we don't have too much of it, and we don't want to go back to the Russian supplier. We've secured supplies as one of the few states in Europe. We've got our needs catered to, and here Poland is secure, but we're not going to pursue this avenue further, and we're very mindful of energy supplies, coal-based, because we've seen, and last winter was a case in point, that not only Poland but also the entire Europe is very much coal-based. And considering what Germany has been doing, 5 more coal-fired, actually lignite mines, so that's another revision down. Are we going to revise our social compact down? I think the social compact gives us a buffer. It was wisely drafted on signing, so the objective of 2049 and the slow weaning of coal mines, setting agendas and schedules for coal mines so that we can wean ourselves off coal mining. It gives us a buffer, which means we have stocks and capacity for coal mining. It's not at odds with EU policies, and we're going to keep delivering of these policies. And I think that's why the social compact will be delivered on, because the social compact is to providing energy security, but also jobs, and also actually abolishing a major industry. So we would like the social compact enacted and delivered on, and we see it as a guarantor of energy security in Poland. As I've already said, today we see coal as a transition fuel. In the 2020s or into the 2030s, the way it's been set out until 2032. This is how we have nuclear energy. We need to keep coal-fired blocks as those ensure constant supply for large-scale utilities. And 2032-34, we could see more significant phasing out, and some collieries are going to work longer, and some traditional utilities as well. And we've seen some revisions in the energy policies in Europe. Now a lot of work has been done in the so-called carbon capturing and storage. That also gives us a lot of hope. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. And we have yet another Pomeranian aspect to it, because some businesses have been thinking if not to inject CO2 under the seabed of the Baltic Sea, and those are the businesses from this region. So moving on, because natural gas is not, there's not going to be natural gas. Perhaps we don't have a lot of natural gas, but there are other gases, and a very specific gas. Biomethane is a specialty at the Ministry of Agriculture. The brief of Janusz Kowalski, who is the plenipotentiary of the government for the transition of rural areas. Mr. Minister, if you could speak us about this window of opportunity, this different type of gas.
Ladies and gentlemen, energy transformation involves actions. When I was informing some time ago that gas cannot be the base as a transition fuel, some laughed about it. So now we know that coal must be the transition fuel. We should draw from the Japanese experience in this respect. I cannot agree with the minister. We cannot say that in 2032 we will be further away from coal. So I am supporting nuclear energy, but we are not going to build it in 9-10 years because of significant energy consumption. So around the world, so we should support coal because coal is still the basis for various economies for the next 20-30 years. So we should not enter into any gas-related projects. So I hope that the ministry is going to refrain from gas-related projects. But if we talk about transformation model, so we should have this political consensus. And, well, I just wanted to ask you one more question before we go into methane. We talk about the strategy. Well, there is no consensus here either. I believe that we are facing a huge energy crisis ahead of us if we don't have any information as for resources for the biggest coal-based plant, Bełchatów mine, means that we will not have energy resources in Poland, so we will be importing energy. I do not agree with that. We need to support mining. Coal every month of delay in these activities will make the situation even worse for the future. So every government within 4 or 5 years will have the significant investment cost as for the transformation and investments related to energy. We talk about significant losses in investments, so with rising prices for energy, this is the challenge that we need to face. So let's go to biomethane. We will go back to it, we will have this diplomacy discussion related to it. So, Mr. Marek Wesoły, well, I would like to add that a good job will be done relating to biogas, but I want to refer to what you said before. I agree that we need coal until we can start new energy. So nuclear energy will be the base. If, for any reason, it turns out that we will not manage or we will have longer time for that, so we are ready to support energy security based on coal. So this is the policy that we face. I just talked about some strategies, some plans. You know that some plans and some strategies have been modified, but something needs to be planned. So I need to say very strongly that if we are not building base for our energy, so we will focus on coal. So physically, if we have the nuclear energy, coal will be phasing out. So providing this new base will do that. So this is the overall plan for the future. Just one sentence. I like the discussion with Mr. Kowalski, but do not talk about crisis and some incredible sources, incredible energy costs. The opposition was doing that. They were not really correct in their predictions. So let's not predict just yet another crisis to scare people. So this is not going to happen. So if we can move on to biomass. So we are analyzing the situation. If we pay 100 euro for the licenses and Polish companies cannot have investments because of various prices and investments. These are facts. I was talking about it 3 years ago. So if we look at what may happen in 3 to 5 years, yes, I agree. We need to focus on security. So we need to have investments in coal to provide this resource. That's why we are investing in biomass, so that 17 million tons of coal can be replaced. So there is huge potential. So I'm happy that we agree as for agricultural biomass plants. So there is significant potential, and also the MPs support it. In Denmark, this is 8 to 12 billion. As for biomethane, so biomass, so this is good direction. So the entire amount of coal imported should be replaced with biomass. So is this possible to have 8 billion cubic meters? Yes, we need to have a certain model for transformation. So we should have stable RES. We cannot have unstable wind turbines and then replace it very shortly with biogas. So we need to have a good plan, a good model, and that's why we need to have a consensus, political consensus in that. As for the analysis, we need to pose a question. What would be the source of electrical energy in 10 years? So we will not have just one big nuclear power plant, so not just 10 years, but 15 and 17. SMRs, the smaller facilities, but this will not be like a solid base. That's why we need investments in coal and stable RES and biomass resources. But I believe that without rejecting the EU energy policy, because we have the cost that we didn't have 2 years ago, we didn't lose 33 million zloty because of the trading in certificates. This money should stay in Poland. We will lose yet another 40 million. We need to take decisions about some solidarity shields. The EU is rising our energy costs. These are the facts. So today, electrical energy, this is 40% of the cost. Without this cost, the Polish transformation will be different. We will be secure. So in this respect, Polish economy cannot just bear these costs, these EU costs. If we are to focus on energy transformation, we can't have this EU tax. We can't bear that. You mentioned that companies are financing. Well, the companies should make investments and not financing these solidarity shields only from surplus income, not just in general. Well, I need to, I'm very sorry, but we won't be able to, we will continue that with the second round, but we won't be able to do that. But so, ladies and gentlemen, 10 billion so that, well, we need to give a voice to everyone during this panel. We need to move on because we are losing time. So, well, the Water 100 Fund, where do you have resources for that? We have 10 billion, our resources, our national resources. That will be like a grant solution. So 4 billion of return resources. So this will altogether be 14 billion. And 3 billion from the EU resources. They will also be devoted into energy transformation, this big transformation. The National Fund is also running prosumer programs that will be funded. So altogether this is 17 billion, and the National Fund wants to focus on various tasks. Poland is in a good situation, so we have a lot of instruments regarding funding. So this is crucial because we have National Fund as the central institution, but we also have these region funds, and they are doing their projects in various regions. We have 16 regional funds, and together with the central fund, we are co-financing various projects related to environmental protection. So this year, these are funds from modernization resources. This modernization fund draws resources from trade in certificates. So the Polish government took 33% of these funds and directed it to Poland. So we have 16 various projects happening already. So co-generation heating system, this is 5 billion zloty, alternative fuels in energy sector, 6 billion zloty for incineration plants, RES, energy efficiency improvement, this is 1 billion, energy for agriculture. We also want to boost investments regarding biomethane plants and PV panels, water plants. This is also another billion for agricultural regions and for the farmers. So we have enormous resources, and also Phoenix, the European resources for climate and environment, and 32 million from ministerial funds. So we have a lot of resources for that. The National Fund signed the agreement with Orlen Synthos to co-participate in smaller nuclear power plants. So this is a cooperation that has been signed already. And we will provide a business plan, economic plan, and the participation of National Fund is possible. This is yet another option for the National Fund. I just wanted to ask you, not everybody was reading the conclusions. What about these applications within your sector? Yes, the Poles would like to invest in these energy solutions. We are participating in various prosumer projects. We haven't been part of siege projects for over 30 years. We are talking about prosumer projects, like individual people who want to invest in these projects. So clean air, my electrical energy. So these two projects. So half of the prosumers received support from the National Fund for such investments. So these are these smaller prosumer projects. They are extremely crucial. But the Poles need to manage with their own projects, also funded from the National Fund. We talked about gas today. Before the war in Ukraine, the majority of applications for funds referred to gas-related projects. And when the war broke out and the Polish government took care of the Baltic Pipe, the investors were more reluctant. They were withdrawing their applications. But in our offer, we have a number of projects invested not in energy resources and cogeneration, but also energy consumption and energy efficiency. We need to take care of the energy, to use it less, to have lower consumption. So National Fund, this is a program for many entities, for individuals, for companies, and for distribution, for operators. So this infrastructure must be in good condition. Digitalization, storage of energy resources, smart meters, and adjusting energy infrastructure to electrical vehicles. So we are not imposing anything. We have various programs, green transport. We have programs for individual people. So the Poles can choose from different projects as they wish, as they decide. They can also receive subsidies for electrical vehicles. So we have this fund. So I think this is a good situation. We are talking about applications who want to have some heat pump and they want to invest in agricultural regions with some new solutions. Now we move on to more international.
We discussed in detail our energy policy in Poland. We've had some interesting discussion, but now is the time to speak a bit more about international cooperation with Poland participation in the wider context of what's happening in Ukraine. So the first to speak would be Ole Toft, who is the ambassador of Denmark in Poland. I would ask you, sir, about two aspects of our cooperation in hard security, looking at Baltic Sea, which is close nearby, and in the soft energy cooperation, future projects, renewables, especially wind farms. What are the prospects? What are we doing? What will we do together?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that I believe that you can say that energy policy is in many ways the queen of all policies. Energy policy is so complicated and there's so much money involved that the energy policy of a country is in many ways a test on whether you have an efficient political system that can make decisions, also difficult decisions, and have the strength to enforce them as well. And here I would like by starting by praising Poland. Your decision on getting independent of Russian gas, it was a 20-year project, but you did it. And I think we can all see today that it was the right thing to do. And I would also like to thank Poland for the leadership that you are showing right now in strengthening the interconnectors, both in gas and electricity in Central and Eastern Europe. It is of course in the interest of Poland, of course, but it's also to the benefit of Europe, very much so. And being a Dane, I'm proud that we built the Baltic Pipe together with you, talking about hard energy cooperation, energy security. And I'm glad that our TSO, gas system in Poland and Energinet in Denmark, have decided that they will continue their cooperation, also looking into the future from natural gas to biomethane, biogas and hydrogen. Because this is the right thing to do, to cooperate on these things that are our shared interests with regard to securing the long-term energy independence and energy security in our part of the world. And talking about biogas and biomethane, let me also take the opportunity to thank Minister Kowalski, Minister, for your good work, great work on introducing the new industry of biogas here in Poland to the benefit both of Polish society as a whole, but also to many individual people, especially farmers, facing a hard time these years. Here biogas gives a real win-win chance of combining green transition with helping farmers. So thank you for doing that also here in Poland. If we are looking towards the softer things that we are working, and if you're talking about things like offshore wind as soft, I would like to say it's not. It's also heavy industry, and that is also one of the reasons that we believe that Poland has a great future here as becoming not only a regional but a European level center for wind industry, because today especially offshore wind industry is really heavy industry. You know, the offshore turbines that, for example, Vestas is going to build in Szczecin, Świnoujście. We're talking about towers that will be 300 meters high, and we are talking about single projects that have the size as a nuclear power plant. So there are great opportunities in this, and again we have a shared interest around the Baltic Sea to cooperate in developing this new industry to the benefits again of our individual nations, but also to the benefit of the energy security as a whole. But again, these things are also, as we talked about earlier today, linked to how are we then going to protect all these installations at sea. Just like gas pipelines and nuclear power plants, also the offshore installations are industrial centers of a size that needs strategic planning with regard to the protection of these installations. Thank you very much.
Okay, one word more about the hard security of such infrastructure, because we have obvious threats after Nord Stream 1 and 2 sabotage. How are we cooperating in NATO, inside the EU, to make it safer to produce energy, to transport energy and reach other resources through Baltic Sea?
Yes, we are of course working very much together within the EU, because we have a common energy policy, or at least that's what we try to get. And I think Poland is playing an important role in developing this policy, also now and then by asking some of the difficult questions, but also in the way that you are building interconnectors in the region. That's an important part of creating a common energy policy. So the EU is a crucial area for cooperation. Also NATO will play a role, especially in protecting our critical infrastructure, because it's such a huge task that we can't do it on our own as individual countries. And it's not, and I think that from a security point of view, there's both a role for the EU to play there, but I think also that this is actually so hard security that it's also a NATO task. But that's up to our politicians to decide. And then at the end, there is so much to do bilaterally between countries that are more and more linked together in their energy policies. And let me say that in Denmark, we believe, and I think I can see the same in Poland, that a sound and long-term energy policy planning must be based on having diversity in your energy supply. diversification. And I think we can also see that from the crisis we have met the last year or two, that the countries that have been following a single, supply path, whatever it has been, these countries are facing a difficult situation, where those countries that have a more diversified energy supply, they do better. And that was also what we learned in Denmark many, many years ago in the 1970s, when we were totally dependent on oil from the Middle East. That was not a sustainable model.
And there was a crisis also. Yeah. So we've learned this lesson. Poland and Denmark understand it very well. Let's stay with the Nordic states and now with Sweden, the embassy of Sweden, and Michael Bente, who I'd like to ask about these prospects of cooperation at the Baltic Sea between Poland and Sweden. Obviously, we got a cable underground. It was under the sea. Sorry. There was some issues with it lately, but how can we make our cooperation even bigger, greater?
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
It's switched on. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation and also to convey a message from the ambassador that, who would like to be here but unfortunately couldn't be here. Concerning the subject we are talking about now is, of course, it's not possible to divide it from the climate change. So we must also understand that what's happening in the Nordic countries, in the Arctic, is going to influence also Poland. And I agree with the Danish ambassador that it's necessary to boost the development of alternative energy sources. And that's something that Sweden has tried to promote also during our presidency in the Ministerial Councils of the European Union, which has almost run out of time, but still we have a month left, and we hope that we can, for instance, bring aboard the directive for energy efficiency and the directive for renewables, which would change the options for the European Union to invest in these kind of energy sources. We were hearing here about the problems of this energy transition. Yes, it is a lot of problems, but it also gives opportunities to growth. And we see that in Sweden. In fact, it's a remarkable development in the north of Sweden. In the same place as we feel the climate change, it goes 3 times as fast as in other areas of the world. We see also the investments, huge investments in the green energy. We see 2 steel mills growing up. We see the Northvolt factory. You have it here also outside Gdańsk, and we see a lot of infrastructural investments going on. In fact, it's about 100 billion Swedish crowns that will be invested there, 10 million euros. What we lack is people. We need to have more people coming.
So we're invited to Sweden, as I understand.
Sorry?
So we are invited to Sweden.
You are very much
It's
invited.
a wonderful place, but one more question about the nuclear energy, because this crisis underlined the importance of having a stable fundament of electricity generation, also in Sweden. What's your take on this aspect?
Yes, well, we had nuclear energy in Sweden. One of the power plants were too close to our neighbor Denmark, but nevertheless we have changed the philosophy concerning nuclear, because we were having a political decision to have not more nuclear to, I believe it was 2010. But now everything has changed, of course. But what I would like to say, what has changed a lot during the Russian invasion and before that is the pandemic, is that we found out how to save energy as well. And that's a very important part, which we are talking about too little, I think, energy efficiency. In my former capacity, I had the opportunity to work to be the Swedish representative in IFIs, handling, for instance, energy assistance to our eastern neighbors. And I saw what gains can be made of energy efficiency very, very fast. So I think that it's necessary for all of us to understand we need to save more energy, but also to invest in energy efficiency. Just to change LED lamps, for instance, it
brings a change of several percent, of several tenths of percent. So you're right, because it's good for our wallets, it's good for our security, and it's bad for Vladimir Putin, by the way. So fingers crossed for NATO membership of Sweden in the meantime, and we'll switch back to Finland, who is a NATO member, and congratulations to that. Ms. Ambassador, I'd like to ask about your take on this energy transition in times of crisis, because we are not quitting this transition, but we need to adjust it somehow. So what's your take on that, especially in the context of our cooperation between Poland and Finland?
Thank you very much for the invitation, for the possibility to be here. First of all, I would like to emphasize also what was also mentioned here, that energy policy is extremely important, but it goes hand in hand with the climate policy. And I think that we can all see also the consequences of the climate change every day around us. And that has been, the climate policy has been the top priority for Finland for years already. And we are legally committed to carbon neutrality by 2035. So pretty quickly, and it's a huge challenge. But we have done some work, and we are one of the lowest levels. We have one of the lowest levels on fossil fuels among the IEA countries, which is, in Finland it's 36, whereas in many countries it's close to 70%. And this also connects to this hard security in that sense that Finland, we have never really been able to trust our neighbor. And
we know that situation pretty well.
Also, apart from keeping, for example, conscript army, always, ever since after the Second World War, we have also very much invested in energy diversity. It could have been possible for us to buy cheap energy from Russia. Russia is close by, and all the connections were there. But because of the security reasons, we have also always taken care of our energy diversity. It has not always been cheap. And, but we have invested, as the climate has been so important for years already, also for green energy, for clean energy, and for stable energy. And apart from wind power and biomass, biogas is also very important in Finland, because we have lots of forestry, and that provides raw material for that. But then one of the things what Finland has relied on is nuclear power. Unlike many other countries. We started building them in the 1970s, or finished first buildings in 1970s, but during the past 15 years, Finland is the only country that has finished a nuclear power plant. And this is also good warning for Poland. That project was quite long, 10 years delayed. It was painful, and it still might be painful, but at least
you have it.
We have it now, and it actually started working in a very crucial moment in April of this year. And it's a 1,600 megawatt power plant. And also we prolonged the license for the two other power plants, what we have till 2050. And today Finland is producing 40% of our electricity with nuclear power. And as I said, it's very stable. But of course, certain problems, but also Finland has been the leading country in thinking about the waste management. And we are the first country to have the last, or the disposal place for the nuclear waste and high risk waste in 2025. It's called Onkalo, and it's like a geological hole in
it's
the...
like 10,000 meters underground, right?
Exactly. And so that will be in 2 years at our disposal.
So nuclear energy will stay in Finland. But how will it integrate renewables? What's your take on this renewable transformation? You'll be full of renewables like every country here. So how would this duet cooperate?
Well, we have also, as I said, we have been investing into wind power very much. A little bit also on solar, but it's a little bit challenging in our location, but not impossible, because during the summer we
have sun sometimes.
Yes, and we have also built our first offshore power plant, or not power plant, but park, and we are very much keen to cooperate with Poland in all these, and let's say our experience has been very, very good. So it's ongoing, and as I said, this biomass, and to me personally very close, is the waste to energy component, because I think that this is two flies in one swat, because in that way the waste becomes a raw material that you can use in a good way. And that is also something I think that in Poland you should be investing in, because the waste is getting a big problem everywhere. But also I would say that in cooperation on the nuclear field, we are more than ready to help Poland. Now our project so far is finished. We are also planning to do the SMRs, and I think that there are a lot of good opportunities for cooperation.
Our regulators cooperate already, right? Because you got the most strict regulator in the world.
Yes, and that's why also the project was delayed, but of course the security is the issue number one, and we have to be really strict on that.
Of course, and our countries could cooperate and are cooperating in this manner, so let's switch to another country, and I'll ask Gabriel, polski czy angielski?
Polski.
Okay, so we'll switch back to Polish for a second, ponieważ nasz gość z Litwy potrafi pięknie mówić po polsku i z nami w tym języku porozmawia, więc tak będzie naturalnie. Chciałem zapytać o współpracę po kryzysie. Państwa prezydent mówi o tym, że trzeba przyspieszyć synchronizację, która będzie się odbywać przez Polskę. Chodzi o to, żeby odłączyć kraje bałtyckie od systemu elektroenergetycznego posowieckiego BREL, połączyć je z kontynentalnym przez Polskę i po pierwsze chciałem zapytać o ten proces właśnie, a potem o różne formy współpracy, która już jest, jak na przykład w gazie, ale też może być, czyli na przykład na morzu przy morskich farmach wiatrowych.
Tak. To postaram się odpowiedzieć po polsku, chociaż mój polski nie jest idealnie perfekcyjny. Współpraca z Polską dotyczy dużo obszarów w energetyce i jest na wszystkich szczeblach praktycznie perfekcyjna. Szczególnie na poziomie międzyministerialnym i rządowym jest na najwyższym poziomie. I kluczowy projekt od wielu lat to jest synchronizacja państw bałtyckich z Europą kontynentalną przez Polskę. Polska tu odgrywa kluczową rolę, bo to jest jedyny korytarz, przez który ta synchronizacja sieci może się odbyć.
The only role where the synchronization could take place. So, as a result of last year outbreak of war, we made the decision in Lithuania the best solution would be to alleviate the risk for our risk. Our national risk would be to speed up the synchronization of the Baltic states. Now, however, we've been awaiting for the political decisions of all the parties, i.e. all the three Baltic states and Poland and the European Commission, to achieve or speed up this synchronization next year. It is our firm belief that all the key elements or critical infrastructure elements for this quicker synchronization will be ready next year, and we can do it. The Gdańsk Institute will be an answer to that, which has been providing the information what infrastructure is necessary to effect it. Right, because I'd like to have this follow-up of this Harmony Link, Polish-Lithuanian project, which is going to be delayed because the scarcity of cables, we have inflation, there's going to be issues with financing, so it's proven much more expensive. Is it possible without this connection? Or we like it like how the Ministry of Climate Change in Poland is splitting the synchronization stages. The first one is a technical stage, and we just need Litpol link, and the technical exchange is just Litpol link. And stage 2 of synchronization is the commercial one, and this is where we need the Harmony link to have this interconnector to replace the current Litpol link, which is currently the transporter interconnector, and we've been in active talks with the Polish government, especially in our talks with the European Commission, because let's remember the war and the entire post-pandemic economic situation has affected finances. Yeah, going back to Gabriel Grabaszewski and Madam Minister, what about this harmony link? Is there any understanding in Brussels that this project is going to be more expensive but still indispensable? We've been saying that for a long time. It's not just a bit more expensive, but twice as expensive and critical. We've been ready and we've supported the Lithuanian partners to find this more extensive financing from Brussels, so far unsuccessfully. But we've been raising the key significance of this project, and without this project, no daydreaming will allow us to synchronize the Baltic states fully successfully, and we're going to work on it. I trust this project will be pulled off with extended financing, but there's extended budgeting is necessary across board. If your projects have grown just 30% more expensive, you're lucky. Everything's much more expensive, obviously. That's enough for now. I'm going to speak on it later. We've been working together hand in hand for quite a time, so I can just corroborate what's been said. And we're going to have time. And if Hamali Link works, then it's going to make it on land near Żarnowiec, isn't it? Right. So we are very near this regional thing. Coming back to Gabriel Gorbachevsky, now the perspective of the future. What can we do together in energy, Poland and Lithuania? It's worked with gas, but how about energy transition? What can we do here offshore together? Natural gas and energy power, because we inaugurated Lithuania in 2015. The next strategic project for Lithuania after the synchronization will be offshore, because we've been planning 4 concessions, 700 megawatts each, and we hope each of them is going to cater to 25% of our energy consumption, so strategic energy source for us. And for now, 65% of energy we have been importing after we closed down the Ignalina nuclear power in 2010. Any interest on the Polish side? Yes. A month ago, I believe, PKN Orlen have Orlen Neptunas as special vehicle, and in a month, but July to September, we're going to hold 2 auctions for the first 2 concessions, and we are hoping that Polish businesses will supply their bids. So there's been some interest from private businesses in Poland. So there's a lot of cooperation, and this is the basis for some joint venture with Lithuanian businesses and further collaboration. And for the 3rd and 4th concessions, we've been hoping that we could develop hybrid connections between one state and the other, not shore to shore like Harmony Link, but between offshore wind, and to have large, even up to 75% financing from the European Union, and to connect us even more. What are such hybrid connections for? So far they haven't existed, but now that the Danish partners, what's the point of such connection? Better integration and better energy flow on the Baltic Sea. The Baltic Sea is uniquely fantastic for this because it's not very deep, and with small distances of up to 300 kilometers state to state, and much better conditions than on the North Sea, but it's a perspective post-2030. But yet another point for possible cooperation I see is we've been working on the revision of our energy strategy, because for now we have 100% renewables, but we see this need for a strong basis in our energy industry. So that's why we're going to develop this strategy based on viability studies, one from DNV, a Norwegian business, and the other one from American National Renewable Energy Laboratories of Denver. And the first scenarios we've been given as the Ministry of Energy in Lithuania. Across all the scenarios, we're going to lead SMRs. Your own, yes. So located in Lithuania, correct. And Poland regionally has been a leader in SMRs, and a lot of businesses have been cooperating. So I naturally see this capacity, and I see this first direction where SMR technology would be, for further expansion would be the Baltic states and Lithuania. So yes, lots of room for collaboration. Allow me to switch to English yet again so that our guests can speak to me more convenient. We have two nuclear states, the USA and France. And I'm switching to English now.
Maybe France first. I would ask you about the prospects of cooperation in Polish nuclear program to wider extent in energy sector, because France is not only nuclear energy, it's full of innovations in different sectors. I would ask our distinguished guest from France about the possibilities to cooperate first in nuclear, still, if there's room for such cooperation, and then in different dimensions of our energy policy.
Yes, do you hear me? You hear
me?
Thank you very much for the invitation and for being here in this panel for this discussion. But I will switch into Polish actually, because we have our guests in Polish here.
Didn't know. That's great.
Tak, czyli
So, France and Poland. We are not neighbors. We are not on the Baltic Sea, but we have a lot of common interest. I'd like to underline the reasons to reinforce our cooperation in energy generation. First and foremost, we have a very odd energy mix in France and Poland. But if we have a look at our strategies, then in 20-25 years we're going to have a very similar energy profile. And this is a very important theme in this debate. We have been phasing out coal, and we understand this process, so the entire coal mining region's transition, which could be painful, but also a major opportunity. And I would also like to add that actually Poland is a key partner for France, and Polish-French relationships have been gaining more traction also in the energy sector. This is part of our strategy and our bilateral partnership, which was renewed 3 years ago during the visit of President Macron to Poland. I'd also like to stress that Poland and France are parts of the same group of nuclear energy allies, and Poland has joined the initiative that Minister ASP równa się Alliance Nuclear, so the nuclear alliance. So speaking of nuclear energy, essentially France is ready to support Poland. In the French nuclear program, we have this integrated global offer which provides early stages of construction support and operation with proven technology, and also 100% European technology. I'd also like to say that France has got an ambitious nuclear program to build additional nuclear fleet. 6 more EPRs, and I'd like to stress the French experience in the fuel, especially owing to Oranowy and Farmaton. But I'd like to signalize that France has been working on SMRs, which are going to be ready and operational by 2030. So we see in our offer a lot of possible synergies between the nuclear programs of France and Poland. I need to ask this follow-up question on the state of affairs, because on the media it's been reported that the Prime Minister's office have been in touch with the French partner speaking of large-scale nuclear energy. How can you possibly comment this information? If you could repeat, on the Polish media it's been reported that Poland has been about the second site for nuclear energy, which hasn't been named yet. Can you tell us anything more about it? I'm not an expert on nuclear energy, so I think you should ask at the source, the Polish government, because the French side have been very much, but we couldn't see anything, any visits late at night and talks about nuclear. Well, I had to make an attempt, didn't I? And nuclear apart, where can we work, or where have we been cooperating? Yeah, thank you very much for this question. We focus on nuclear, but also a low and zero emissions energy sources, which are a very important element to our energy mix. I see 4 areas for possible cooperation. The first one is offshore wind. The French businesses are ready to cooperate within this offshore program, although we know the outcomes of this long series of events and bids. But the French offers were assessed very well. And we also have our own ambitious plans with regard to offshore wind development in France. We want to focus on offshore, and we've been planning 18 gigawatts by 2030 to be commissioned, and also 40 gigawatts by 2040. So it's a truly ambitious plan that has been unveiled by President Macron. And now we've got the first offshore wind farm, which was commissioned back in 2022. The other area would be heating. We know that heating is crucially important, especially in Poland. And we have French businesses who've been very much engaged in the Polish heating industry, and they've been investing to decarbonize the sector. The third area, energy storage. Poland has done some hydro projects, and hydro is the first renewable energy in France, and it's the second after nuclear energy mix. So we have more than 25 gigawatts of deployed power. And speaking of further hydro development in France, we would like to optimize our installations to make them ever more efficient. And the last point, biogas. I'd like to stress that France is one of the most dynamically growing markets in biogas, and we also have very ambitious objectives for exporting, for feeding new power on the grid. Now we've got 10 terawatt hours fed on the grid, and we would like to double that by 2030. A question about the battery alliance, because Poland and France and other EU countries have actually funded this alliance to support the development of battery technology. How do you consider this technology? How we could possibly cooperate further? There's just one EPCI we've been working on. This is hydrogen, and I can't remember. So this EPCI we've been working on is very much about, and France and Poland are parts of this EPCI, and I think it's a common project. I meant like the EU-level alliance to support the development of battery power, and the Polish Ministry of Climate Change, jointly with France and other European Union nations, have advocated this initiative. Thank you very much for this contribution. We've got yet another nuclear country, one of the supplier of nuclear country, and we've been joined by another one, and I'm moving back to English.
I will speak to Robert Rudish, who is energy attaché at US Embassy in Warsaw. I'd like to ask you about this those prospects of cooperation between us, which are obvious because we are importing American LNG, of course. How is it going after the Russian invasion in Ukraine? Are we cooperating in this hard security, as I asked the Danish ambassador, to secure this infrastructure? And on the other hand, nuclear energy. Would you be interested in the second location?
Yes.
And that's a perfect answer for quotes.
So, no, and I'll start with the nuclear energy, thank you. The intergovernmental agreement that we have, which has its origins in the request to the United States from the Polish government, is for 2 sites, as I think you're aware. So we certainly hope to partner on the second site as well. The reason for that was the analysis of the Polish government that the economics of the program would benefit from economies of scale. And that 4 to 6 units or more provided an adequate economy of scale for what is a significant challenge of bringing this technology to Poland, to launch Poland as a user of nuclear energy where you have not been previously. So, you know, the technology we offer is the most advanced, proven technology available today. It provides advanced passive safety, which was incredibly important to the Polish government, and that was a major decision maker for the first site. And we think that there is significant challenge, frankly, economically, in bringing multiple large reactor designs online at the same time in a country that hasn't previously deployed this technology. So we do hope to partner on the second site. You know, that being said, we expect this to be broader than bilateral. There is opportunity for a large number of other countries to participate in this project, especially as it continues to grow. It's no small thing. So, you know, we hope to include as many of our friends and allies as possible.
Should we expect any news? Should we expect any news before the autumn, as it was mentioned by Ms. Minister?
That's a decision for the Polish government. You know, we've provided as much information as we can, and we'll continue to provide as much information as we can about the technology, about the technical support, about the financial support, to include U.S. financing, the Clean Energy Training Center we're building here in Poland. And then when Poland has the information it needs and conducted the adequate consultations with Brussels, they'll make their decision.
So could you dwell a bit into this topic of issues with multiple technologies in the energy sector with nuclear? What's your take on that? Why is it difficult?
It's an economy of scale. Each reactor design is different. As the companies learn, the Polish companies that are going to build this reactor learn to build this reactor, like all new technology deployments, the first one will be slower than the third one. And the third one will likely not be as fast as the fourth one. So, you know, as they streamline the process, and you can see this in Georgia right now, where Vogtle 4 has almost caught up with Vogtle 3, our new nuclear reactors that we're building in the U.S. state of Georgia, one of which just reached 100% criticality, 100% power last week. Poland is going to benefit from that same advantage of economy at scale. And I should add, not just for the 6 or however many reactors they want to build here in Poland, but also within the region, because there's a lot of countries within Central and Eastern Europe looking at the Westinghouse AP1000. And if Polish companies establish this expertise in how to build this reactor, the opportunity for that to be a service that is provided throughout the region is immense.
Okay, so just one question about the security of supply of LNG, because in Russian media we can read that in a month or two all the LNG will fly away to Asia. What's your take on that?
So, you know, that didn't happen last year. That was a concern last year, and it didn't happen. Obviously, a lot of these are on commercial terms, but we're working effectively to make sure that countries have the supply they need. We've ramped up exports in the United States. Last year, I think we accounted for U.S. imports of LNG to Poland accounted for 2/3, roughly, 60-something% of the total LNG imports. And we're doing our best to make that available to our partners. I think, you know, as I said, last winter's track record shows the model works. It's not set it and forget it. But we have the political support and the coordination to make sure that we manage this process successfully.
So what about those stranded assets? Because we have this discussion about natural gas role in energy sector, and we don't want to go too deep into natural gas in Poland. There is a big reluctance towards natural gas after the energy crunch in Europe. So what's your assessment of the time frame of using of this LNG potential?
Yeah, so I mean, every country has to transition on a different timeline based off its resources and its needs and its situation. But what we're offering is partnership on that transition, not specific deadlines, but as we can bring new technologies available, we want to work with our partners, with our allies, to bring those here. The minister discussed the grid. I think that's 100% right. You know, the advances to modernizing the Polish grid are so critical to helping to expand the scale of renewables. And that's not not a single solution, but it's an important part.
Thank you very much. So we have a small room for a second phase of our discussion. We'll go back to Poland and Polish ministers and politicians, and I'll switch back to Polish once again. I szanowni państwo, wracamy do pani minister.
Ladies and gentlemen, we go back to the Madam Minister. So your comment on these various technologies we've heard. Yes, there are many issues, so I will try to refer to that. First of all, I don't know why Mr. Kowalski is talking about the slowdown for significant power plant solutions. So we learn from the mistakes of our neighbors, of our partners. So the airport is not going to be delayed, neither nuclear energy projects will be delayed. So nothing shows, there is no indication that this large nuclear program as well as the commercial program will be delayed. So everything is as for the schedule. Every country is building their own solutions based on their own experience, based on geology and geography of a particular country. We cannot include hydro energy into our energy mix, but we have the Baltic Sea with a lot of wind power. So this is where we look at, thinking about the future as our neighbors from other Baltic countries. We don't have the earthquakes, so geology is very favorable for smaller and bigger projects related to nuclear energy. I already talked to my colleagues from other countries, so this SMR coalition is bigger and bigger. This is very effective and rather quick source of energy, but also steam. We also managed heating. This is also a solution for the heating system, so like a byproduct from SMRs. So we can add that into the system, and this is not cost effectively. Like adding also solutions related to waste management and incineration solutions. So these are the solutions that we support. Well, at the European level, it's not that if you shout, it means you are right. So changing also our parts of our strategies means that not only press conferences, but discussions outside the public eye. This is the place where we very effectively negotiate and discuss. We are happy about Szczecin factory. This could be like an offshore hub and a port. We are very happy. I'm really very fast. One more commercial location. This is actually the third one. I'm just taking notes while you are speaking. When we talk about transformation, this is not only governments talking about it in relation to environmental protection. Economy sector is saying that decarbonization strategy is also saying that Orlen and PGE are so very rational, not political mix, but very rational energy mix. This is the future. So if we are able to store CO2 and green hydrogen and synthetic fuels. So all these aspects, this can contribute to the energy mix. I emphasize this good cooperation with Lithuania as for Link and the report we are almost concluding. So this synchronization seems to be safe. In June we have a meeting in Warsaw to that. And still on the European level, we need interconnectors, smart connections between the parties. This is also part of our strategies. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you one more thing, because in the panel we've heard that on the 23rd of June, you will have the representative of trade unions meeting you. During the crisis, we have some resources of coal. We were afraid of winter time, and we still have of this coal left. The miners say this is too much of it right now, and if this reaches the market, then it will be problematic for the miners. Signing an agreement that was announced with Chairman Duda from trade unions. We believe it's good to talk in conference room, negotiating various aspects. So any surplus of resource like the coal that we are having right now, this is not only a result of really mild winter and our preparation for worst case scenario. And secondly, this also resulted from this panic and this Russian narration that we had, that we will have nothing to work with, nothing to heat with, nothing to eat. So that was so this narration related to some crisis, panics or incredible prices, this should be stopped. Let's not follow that approach. We are very open to dialogue, to discuss various aspects, because it's worth discussing. So we are talking about miners, so a minister responsible for transformation, if you can add to that. Yes, absolutely. We are in dialogue, in an open dialogue with the ministry. We know that this is a problem, so some trade unions or some representatives of trade unions behave differently. We know that we had to order some surplus of coal for the winter, so we were expecting that it might happen. So we try to solve that. We are not going to do anything to the detriment of the Polish mines, and we are not going to do anything detriment to the Poles. So from the very beginning, we've been consulting with the Poles, with the society. We know what a compromise is about. So now I believe that this is almost the campaign that has started before the election. So this disinformation from the Russian side is there. And I've been working very briefly in the ministry. Of course, this is not easy. Everything is challenging, but I believe that when we said about diversity in energy transformation, and we were showing the efficiency of our activities. And of course, yes, there is this surplus you mentioned, and we are going to solve this problem not to hurt anyone. I would like to quote the analysis from the previous time. Well, if we have -15 during winter, -20, then it would be difficult. We had instances, as for the water reserves, we had icebreakers on the Vistula River at some point in our history, so that was a warm winter. So now there is a situation just because of favorable weather conditions, and we were preparing for the worst case scenario. I would like to thank our partners from abroad for the discussion, because when we look at the transformation, we have a lot of supporters. We have the Denmark solution, and France, well, this is very close to our solutions. We are going to talk about cooperatives. This French foliage is showing that the development here based on biomass, this is a model that we should follow in terms of heating for smaller units. Here we also have the partners from Lithuania, a perfect model for the last 10-12 years. This is what you have done with the transformation, being independent from Russia, focusing on forest biomass. So Finland again and Sweden in this respect. So we can work with you. We have Japan also and the United States that are interested in not spending just huge amount of money for CO2 certificates, but keep the money within Poland, within the Polish economic sector for nuclear solutions. So I want this 30-40 billion to stay within the Polish economy and not into CO2 certificates. I want you, Madam Minister, to be right and to open in Poland in 32, to open the first nuclear plant. I don't know any that nuclear power plant that was built within 9-10 years. I hope you are right. So I am very down to earth man. I would like this to happen in the future. I hope that ERDs and SMRs are going to be much faster, but until this happens, we can rely on transitional energy source, which is coal, and find European partners related to biomass solutions to lower the import of gas to Poland. So yes, we can discuss. You are also providing various analysis. So as Europe, can we think that the energy crisis is over? No, it's, if we talk about tariffs for energy and heat, when we look at the prices of certificates, which are higher than CO2 certificates, so logically we can say that the prices, because of the EU policy, will be higher. So it will hit the Polish economy and the competitiveness as for the Polish energy efficiency industry. So we should have political consensus around it. We need a reform on the European level regarding certificates. We produce 70% of energy from coal, so we should keep the money related to this sector into the energy security, into the energy sector in Poland and military sector. I hope this is possible. And also we need to focus on biomass. For example, forest biomass or agricultural biomass, like our partners from Denmark or France. This is very rational, so I'm very happy that we managed 10 days ago to adopt a resolution unanimously. As for agricultural biogas and biofuels, so we stabilized this market and we improved the number of green components. Thank you, Madam President, for your support here. We are waiting for another legislation regarding cooperatives. And I'm sure that if we take common sense into consideration, we need to lower the cost of the heat and energy, and this cost refers to the tariffs, the EU certificates. This money should stay within the Polish government, within the Polish economy and military sector. Well, appreciating your analytical skills, please look at the energy prices at forwarders. So we have the change down, not up. So if the experts are analyzing these prices, they will take into consideration the volumes purchased this year and next year. So if we look at the prices, energy auction, then we look at it. We cannot change technologies for biomass and for the plants. It's not possible to provide quick solutions. But if you look at the European markets, if you look at the prices of prices of gas and other resources, the crisis, of course, is not yet over. But when we think about predictions for the next year, as for the fuels and tariffs, the prices will go down. So I would like the representative of the National Fund, what is possible? Okay, the minister is joining another conference. It's not always one voice between us, but we are open to discuss various issues. So what is possible thanks to, as a result of EU regulations? So we heard from our ambassadors that we need to remember the environmental protection, the challenges we are facing. We need to focus on energy solutions related to environmental protections. So what is your comment on that? The programs I've mentioned at the very beginning, you see that each technology can be supported, of course, from the National Fund. We haven't mentioned, I believe, one more technology that Poland should be using and is using, geothermal. These drillings, this research program for local authorities. So a lot of resources is also transferred to this safe, clean and renewable source of energy. This is crucial. What we are doing should be safe for the Poles and stable for the Poles, but also should focus on these sections of economy that will be transformed. This is also included in our project. So we want these programs to go hand in hand. So providing new programs is more difficult. One program after another, they should complement each other, but they should not overlap. So these technologies are different. Gas, of course, there is some security in that, but we should slowly refrain from it. Individual clients looking at various boilers and condensers, they refrain from this technology already. This is what you asked at the very beginning. The Poles direct their activities and investments into heat pumps. these should be Polish solutions. We would like that to provide Polish solutions to that. So, of course, we provide resources for various programs, but this is also a significant driving force for this sector of energy. So those millions and billions of zlotys generated significant investments. Therefore, this good condition of the Polish economy. 1 zloty of investment of subsidy generated 6 zloty in investment. So the support for individuals is really significant. These programs I mentioned, these are not only individual clients but also other entities. So when you look at the National Fund is supporting every technology you have mentioned. This is very inclusive. We also provide energy consultancy program. In the new perspective, we will also have climate experts, climate advisors, and they are going to support various entities free of charge. Everyone can obtain this free of charge consultancy on the level of investment. So this modernization fund I also mentioned before includes social consultations. As a result, we can tailor-made these programs and use very smart funding, including the environmental protection. This is really a broad subject. Climate transformation, energy transformation, this is a topic for a number of panels to discuss, but these topics you have all mentioned can be included in the various projects supported from the National Fund. Are we going to have a certain unification, so that these projects do not overlap? There is no overlap. They are really precisely prepared and developed. They supplement each other, just as the legislation we've been working on and the strategy. So it is like a comprehensive response to the war, to the changing energy market and energy mix. We haven't mentioned also hydrogen and pump solutions. We had just 2 hours for this panel. We could be talking about it for 4. There were a lot of different issues, so a round of applause for our speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the panel, and I give the floor to the moderators of the